Well, every month on a full moon, I like to shine the light on someone, and you're someone in our local community that I really value and treasure, and it's a beautiful opportunity to shine the light on all that you have done and are doing in life. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands in which we live and are sitting at the moment. And also I'd like to acknowledge the ancestors who are with us and all around us and who guide us and bring us together in beautiful ways. And also I'd like to acknowledge all the people who are listening to this, and my hope is that there will be something within this conversation that really inspires something deep. So before we begin, Kirsten, I'm just going to read a quick bio so that we can get a bit of a background of who you are. So Kirsten Larsen, her deepest intention is to be fully alive, celebrating life through all of her senses, while nourishing vitality in the people, places, and communities around her. This intention became clear to her more than 15 years ago, and its expression has continued to evolve as new ways of learning and facilitating transformation in these times. With a desire to be of service, she first applied herself to environment and climate policy, followed by food policy and food systems change within government and academia. She later co-founded and co-managed the Open Food Network for 14 years and helped establish the regenerative farm and community at Puckawidgie in northeastern Victoria with Serenity Hill. Each was an essential preparation as through these experiences, Kirsten recognised a deeper seam of work calling her, not only in changing systems, but in restoring the living relationships that shape them. This unfolding led her into deep nature connection and biodynamic craniosacral therapy. Biodynamic craniosacral therapy. And years of learning and practice with teachers from diverse lineages. She now brings these together in direct hands-on work, supporting people to heal connections to their own bodies, hearts, and spirits, deepening their perspective antenna to others, nature, and spirit. What a great life path, mate.
Yeah, well, firstly, thank you for inviting me to participate. I've listened to quite a number of your full moon conversations and really enjoyed getting to know you over the last little bit. And just to acknowledge that I'm on Wurundjeri country today. I'm here in Naarm in Melbourne. So I'm not in my home ground. And really appreciate this chance to, have one of our conversations, but on a screen. As I've said to you, this is it's a funny moment for me. It's probably the first time that I'll be talking about this this part of the journey in a kind of interview-like format. So it's fresh. It's fresh material for this format. So I really appreciate you inviting me to participate.
I'm excited. And yes, we had a beautiful conversation here only a couple of days ago. You were here doing healings, and we sat down with a cup of tea, and it's like, wouldn't it be lovely if we were recording right now? It was great. So we're getting the spirit of that. We will continue this conversation now. But I remember when you were talking about your previous work, in systems change, and you mentioned at one point having to explore for future thinking deep time.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though that was in sort of the academic realm, I'm really, really interested to hear you open the conversation around deep time, because I think that flows so beautifully into the work that you're doing now.
Okay, cool. Deep time. Well, my eyes were open to deep time. It was actually while I was working in government in climate and sustainability policy, and there was encouragement to do further study, to go and do a master's, and the standard thing that people did was a master's in like public policy or something like that. But I came across this thing called a master's in strategic foresight, which was running at Swinburne University. And so, yeah, I was put in this, it was the nascent sustainable futures unit, it was called, and they were wanting us to think about bigger picture sustainability. And so I found this thing, and then, it was agreed that government would pay for me to go and do it. And so within that master's, that was really what it's about, was like training in how to think about the future and how to then operate within that. And I guess it was explicit training in taking a step back and looking at, okay, well, how do we make sense of the sum total of human knowledge and experience at this point, kind of like meta history, and do these like the long now, like 10,000 year views. And it was in that time, like I was working in kind of climate policy and things, and experiencing quite a lot of climate and ecological grief, at what was happening. And I went through a phase of finding people and talking to people about, is it possible for humans to eliminate the process of life by what we're doing? And I was able to be persuaded that it was very unlikely that we would be able to do that we might wipe ourselves out, but it was pretty unlikely that we'd be able to wipe out the whole thing. and at the time, that was deeply comforting to me. This is probably like, almost 20 years ago. At the time, it was deeply comforting to me. That was like, okay, so we're sort of operating within, what humans are doing to ourselves and to other things, but also learning about, the 7 great extinctions. And the thing that you talked about in your call the other night, it was about that time that someone told me about. I learned about the thing when oxygen appeared and everything died, and then plants learned to photosynthesize. So I really started to develop that sense of, and the thing that has come through with me, from that study and from that time, is that what this is I remember having not an argument. It was like at a work team planning thing, and there was like an exercise, and a guy who'd come into policy from having studied a lot of quantum physics, and he came in and he gave this presentation that was like, the universe and everything, and then you come down to planet Earth, and you come down to humans, and us sitting in the room, and each one of us. And his conclusion of it was that we're like deeply insignificant and it doesn't matter. And I remember saying to him, wow, like I followed that whole presentation and I came to such a different conclusion. Like my conclusion is, what a just miracle that we exist and are here and are conscious and can pull that together and understand that and talk about that. Like, it's phenomenal, like phenomenal that humans exist and have this consciousness, and like what we are sitting on here is what's the opportunity, what's the potential of life as it's expressing through us in deep time, that humans have made it, that we're here in this point, at this point, with this ability to, so there was that. And then there was one other thing, was probably more like, it was after I'd left government, maybe 2013, something like that. So just early days of Open Food Network. And I came across a book called The Great Awakening, perhaps, something like that. It was written in like the 80s. And the guy was talking about the increasing complexity, like with numbers, with an exponential increase in numbers, you get an increase in complexity and therefore what's possible. And he equated this to jumps in the number of brain cells or neural connections and the increasing consciousness. And he talked about the difference between, he talked about different brains, the human brain, the prefrontal cortex. And then he said, and as we approach 9 or 10 billion humans on the planet, that potentially becomes, if we were able to wire all of those brains and consciousnesses together, there's potentially another leap of consciousness. That's the awareness or the self-consciousness of Gaia. How's that for a possibility? And it just, as someone who'd studied computer engineering and was quite into computers and stuff, and I was deep in my humans are a virus and should just be eliminated as quickly as possible phase. I remember, it was just, again, that thing of like, whoa, it's like these big doses of humility of how small we are and how little we grasp at the same time as being able to grasp some of these things. And so that was another kind of, I guess, spark of where are we in deep time? What is this moment? What is this evolution that's happening? How many times in the past, and now, like, have people been like, this must be the end. This is the end. It can't, like, this is the apocalypse, cataclysm, and it has been. And somehow life keeps unfolding through us and we don't know necessarily what it's about. And so for me, this has been part of the journey of settling into the humility and awareness and openness of what deep time process is happening. Like, we are part of life exploring itself in this great curious thing, and this little spark of awareness that I have in it is like, this this one came, I think it's okay to talk about this. I was taking myself on a deep forest walk in the Otways. There might have been some psychedelic mushrooms involved. I had some stuff that I needed to work through, and I was walking down into a waterfall. And all the droplets of water were, all up in the air. And I just had this kind of moment of each of us as like one of these tiny little droplets, like in the mist, all kind of swirling around these like little sparks of awareness. And it was just, one of those moments where it's like, oh, that's what I am. I'm just this little spark of awareness in the midst of, okay. That was a bit of a rambling answer. Is that enough for deep time?
That's a ripper answer. I love that. And it's true. We're such tiny little flecks, but we are a refraction and a reflection of life itself. And in the healing that I had with you the other day, I love your healings. They are so, they take me into that deep time place. It is like a portal of worlds within worlds. And you mentioned like the long breath that kind of feels similar to the deep time.
Yeah. Okay. Which way am I going to come at that? So one of the images, it's funny, I was just talking to Serana about this morning on the phone. One of the images that one of my teachers, Etienne Piersman, taught us is like of a cross, so a horizontal and a vertical line. And I'll kind of come back to this, but a really important concept in craniosacral therapy is the midline, which is there's multiple midlines, but broadly equated from kind of like your coccyx to your ethmoid bone here, or anyway, there's different ones. And in embryology, the two cells combine, and then you have stem cells, and they're all the same. They're just stem cells. And then you get a separation into 3 layers of what's going to become your skin and your nervous system, and what's going to become, anyway, I won't go into the detail, but you have these 3 layers of cells, and then there's a spark, like it's called the primitive streak, like a line goes up. And once this midline appears, then everything starts to, as he describes it, it gets clarity. So it's clarity. Each cell then starts to understand its purpose, its direction, its timing. Like, you don't form the hand before you've formed the spine, you know. So this incredible complexity, this magnificent human body, you know, comes out of these massive cells, and it's like the midline gives clarity to that, brings the kind of the blueprint. And so this midline is part of what you access or can contact or feel in craniosacral therapy. And it's kind of like I guess an image of the infinite, you know, like, where is this blueprint for creation of the body coming from? It's this, like, you know, so, and through the midline, you're connecting to this space that's outside. And he talks about, you know, that's where we come from. We come from the infinite consciousness. We come down as spirit to have a physical experience in this body for whatever it is that we need to learn and be part of in this life. And then we go back to that infinite. And that the vertical line, you know, if we're standing, it's like earth to sky and energy, you know, and sky to earth, you know. That midline, that vertical line is representations, maybe the wrong word, but of that kind of infinite deep time, deep consciousness, all is one type thing. And then the horizontal line is our life, you know, this life that we have, and it goes from a beginning, say, over to the left, to an end, say, over to the right. That's our life. And think of it like a sine wave or a frequency. It's got these ups and downs. There's all this activity happening, and we get quite, you know, we're absorbed in this bit today. This is this thing that's going on, I'm stressed about because this person, and this thing that's happening with my phone, and, you know, you know, we're all here. And then if you can kind of catch yourself into the midline, then it's like, whoa, the significance of that becomes like, I feel like I'm going to be able to deal with my phone screen. So that midline, when that's one thing. So then within the body, within the human body, and look, let's stick with the human body for now. I think we can feel it more broadly than that. We can feel movements or fluctuations streaming from the midline, and it's not just the up and down movement in the midline. So the craniosacral fluid circulates around your spinal cord, up around these big fluid chambers in your brain that basically is sparking electrical, you know, so it circulates, it moves. But then the body also kind of shows you or repeats this movement of how cells move out from the midline, like how the body's formed. So in craniosacral therapy, you're kind of training your perception to feel this kind of streaming, this motility, and where it's moving and where it's not moving, where it might be blocked, where that kind of blueprint or initial pattern, something is kind of held, something's kind of stored. And so it's called, we talk about it as primary respiration, because this movement, this streaming movement, happens from, you know, that kind of primitive streak moment. It's long before your heart's beating, it's long before you're breathing. So those are your kind of later, higher level, you know, rhythms, these deeper biorhythms operating, you know, that's like the movement of life itself. And so I think the thing I told you about was this video from like the 1950s of that someone took, where they kind of first detected this streaming in protoplasm. And you can see it like that all the protoplasm is just like moving this direction, and then there's a pause, there's a moment of stillness, and then it moves back in the other direction. And that's yeah, that's like an innate deep pattern, you know, and this kind of, whoa, that's me. And I'll just get rid of that. And then I'll try and find you again. There you are. Yeah, so these deep rhythms are within us as life, and that's why we call the primary respiration, or you've got this breath of life happening within, at the base of.
So beautiful.
Yeah. And maybe one other thing, like this is, yeah, I'm only a very newly graduated craniosacral therapist. So, you know, I don't want anyone who's like a 20, 30-year craniosacral therapist, anyway, correcting my attempts at explanation of this stuff. But I'm sure I'm getting things wrong. But this is my understanding of it. And that from that, all of this comes from what is like a stillness, like the dynamic stillness. And then from that, there's this kind of like breath of life that arises out of the stillness. And then from the breath of life arises, you know, these faster movements and form as spirit moves into form. Something like that.
That's
yeah, and it's funny because I guess there's different schools within craniosacral therapy and different I'll wait for my next question in a moment, but just that there's a like the lineage that I kind of learned evolved out of osteopathy and osteopaths who started to realize that the less they do, the deeper the work is when you're really just connecting with this breath of life or these tides. Yeah, but still, like a lot of people prefer to talk about the work more as, you know, it's a body work, biorhythms, like a bit safer in a Western medical paradigm. And sometimes the work, the explicit recognition of energy or spirituality or these other things, that's basically a spiritual practice. You know, when I first walked into my first week of training and I just was laughing, I was like, this is like, you know, this is a spiritual practice wrapped up in a lot of anatomy, and, you know, there's this kind of like wink, wink, nod, nod, you know, kind of. Anyway, yeah, that was a bit of a ramble. Can't remember what you asked me.
No, that's okay. It's a beautiful flow of conversation, and I mean, as you're speaking about these things too, I'm feeling into how this practice has even blossomed in your life. It's almost like this practice has come from that deep place that's just moved up through the pathways that you've already created and is moving into your life now. And tell me about those deep seams that you felt along the way and how you've come into this practice.
Yeah, okay. It's funny because I'm still working on having some sort of website and public, you know, so there's kind of multiple different ways into telling the story, depending on, as I just said, the kind of, you know, more orthodox or safer way and less safe way. Yeah, so I started to have a kind of a growing sense of, I'll try and watch my language for the conversation that we had earlier, but I'm going to call it a kind of disquiet or a kind of like, this is not quite, there's something else. There's something else I need to be doing. About 6 years ago, when Open Food Network was super busy, it was the end of COVID, we had heaps of funding, we just employed 30 people, you know, and 2 little kids, and I was just having this very strong, this is not what I want to be doing, this is not what I'm meant to be doing. And yeah, there were a bunch of things around that, but I started to, first thing I did was it was like, you know, the algorithms fed me this survival quest, which was with Gina Chick, who now a lot of people will know because she won Alone and is very famous. But I didn't really know of her at the time. And I went and did a quest with her for 6 days. And it was right in the middle of this really busy time. And it felt so like both like ridiculous and also just super clear for me that it was like there's this something else is going on. And that was an incredibly powerful experience. And yeah, I came back and knew that I needed to make space. You know, I needed to make some more space somehow. I didn't know where anything was going, but I knew I had to make space for something. And in a lot of ways, my kids were, you know, they're such great teachers and accountability holders, because after a year or two of this, you know, COVID and all the rest of it, I was like, I do not want my children's prevailing memory of their childhood, or me being me, pushing them out of the room because I'm on a meeting, because we were working at home and I was working 60-hour weeks, and my 4-year-old and 2-year-old wanted to play. And, you know, it was just like, this is not right. This is not who I want to be. And how do I change this? And yeah, so I was making space, and then I went on a vision quest. It was about a year later, the solo vision quest. And yeah, there's a whole kind of story around why I wanted to do this different thing before I did the vision quest, which was maybe in a nutshell, the one that I did first was a group of 15 people go for 5 days and 5 nights with very little food, a blanket and a knife and a couple of things that you choose as the group. And so it's pretty rough. Like, people are pretty hungry, but you're in this beautiful place. And the reason I wanted to do that was because I knew that I'm extremely happy by myself in a forest for 4 days and 4 nights. That's no problem, and much more challenging to be with a group of other people. And that I wanted to know, or who am I without this adult identity that I've built? Like, everyone in my life knows me for what I've done, for, you know, career, identity, you know, all of this kind of thing. And I wanted to put myself in a position where I'm not any of those things. I'm not a parent, I'm not a career, I'm nothing that I've achieved. Who am I when everybody's hungry and we need to get a shelter up because it's raining? And, you know, so that was yeah, I guess a step into, or a feeler into, I know that I'm something else, but I don't know what it is. Yeah, so then I did the vision quest, and there's still this, there's so many things, right? But the one that's coming to me, so I'm just going to trust it and talk to it. On the last night, I had this very strong call to go. The lineage that I was questing through allows for movement outside of the circle for kind of ceremony, self-created ceremony. So it's like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm told to walk down to the creek. Now, I've, you know, set myself up this quest spot, which is high up in the rocks in Strathbogie Ranges, and it's dark, and I'm like, that's crazy. Anyway, so I did that, and as I was coming back in, yeah, it was this thing of like, yeah, you needed to know that you could listen and be okay. And then it said the word priestess came like blazing through, and I was just like, oh, don't be ridiculous. I'm just trying to have a basic spiritual experience here. I'm just trying to, you know, lift off the edge of the thing. And it was such a, I was like, cringe, you know, and that's just kind of like reject, you know, wanky. Anyway, and then I, you know, came back in and, you know, told a couple of people, and just quietly started Googling a few things about, you know, someone said to me, don't worry, don't get hung up on it. Just look into what is the archetype. Like, what's the archetype? Because that's what you've been given a message about, you know, so go and find out a bit more about the priestess archetype, and don't get yourself caught up in whether you're a priestess or not. So, okay, great.
Good advice.
So I did that. And I came across this book, and in this book was this woman, and who went through this whole journey, studied all of these different things, and, you know, the dakinis of the Tibetans, and she went through, and she was a dancer, she'd done all these things, and one of the things that she did was biodynamic craniosacral therapy. So there was a chapter on it, and so that was like a ping. And the first time that I had encountered it was after my son Charlie was born, and the midwife had said, go and get a craniosacral thing. I'd never heard of it before then. And we took Charlie, and he was about a week or two old. And we went into this room and he went still, like the room went still, he went still, and he was just staring. There was a little red Buddha statue on a shelf, and he stared at it intently. And it was at an age he shouldn't have even been able to focus his eyes that far, you know. And you know, even the therapist was kind of like, wow, you know. And it wasn't that, like, you know, we think the child's the Buddha or anything like that. It was just that, like, what is this? This is something, you know. And then we went home and he was much quieter and he slept better and he fed better, and it's like, okay, I'll try that myself one day, you know. And so then there's two other threads to the story. I trained through in a Lakota Wapchura lineage via Sal Jankarelli and the Helpers Mentoring Society. And I was at an event, a week-long Connection as a Way of Life event in Castlemaine. And we were doing kind of womb activities, womb connection land activities. And we had gathered as women in the teepee and traced the red thread and realized that out of 30 women, only 2 people could name anyone further back than their grandmother. It was just this real kind of moment of like, whoa, that's not okay that I don't know who these people are. Anyway, and then we were sent out on country to be in connection with our womb and go and sit on country and feel that connection as a place that we don't tend to bring our attention, or in our culture has not given us much space for having our attention there. So I went and I sat on country, and I went looking for a spot, and I saw a spot with sounding like a bit of a theme. There were a bunch of mushrooms. There were lots of mushrooms on this kind of boulder. They weren't psychedelic mushrooms. It wasn't anything like that. I just thought to myself, oh, I'm going to go and sit over there. And often when I meditate or anything, I just wriggle my fingers into the soil. I just kind of wriggle in. So I'm sitting there, wriggled my fingers in. And then I noticed, like, I was moving my finger and I noticed that I could feel it inside my womb. And I had this like, what is that? You know, I was just a complete one of those, like, your paradigm or perspective is like, well, that's not possible. I sat there for like 15 or 20 minutes doing it with my fingers. It's like kind of playing music, you know. It's like if I'm moving here, it's a different sensation. My fingers are in the ground and I'm feeling sensations inside my womb that kind of map to these, but it's like that's not, like, what is that? But it was enough of a thing to just be like, okay, so perception, what I can perceive, what I believe I can perceive, is probably nothing compared to what is actually possible that I can perceive, or what is out there. Like, it's like a little chink of a crack lifted, you know, about like, well, what else is it possible to feel that I don't yet know how to feel? I want to feel all the things that it's possible to feel. And I went back and I spoke to a woman, Aldo, who was there, about it, and she, you know, just gave me very great advice to just follow, you know, just allow that question and that opening and be open to perception. And only found out when I was on a call with her a year later that she's actually been I said, oh, you wouldn't believe, you know, that thing that happened, and, you know, and I've gone and studied craniosacral therapy, you know, because I'm really leaning into this, you know, what can I feel with my hands? And she just laughed and she's like, did you know that I'm a craniosacral therapist? I was like, no, I did not know that. Anyway, so last bit of the story was that when we moved from Violet Town to Mansfield, that year was very stressful. And I you know, my neck and shoulder just basically locked up. And I had been having massages, and, you know, and I just couldn't, nothing would move it. And some mornings I'd get up and I just couldn't, you know, move. And so I remembered, you know, that this thing about Charlie and the craniosacral therapy and all of these kind of pieces, I was like, I need to go and see a craniosacral therapist. So I Googled, you know, and found someone in Melbourne and went and saw them. And I just sat up at the end of the session and was like, what did you just do? You didn't do anything. And all of this, you know, what did you do? You know, I booked in another session. I'd done a little bit of research. I booked in another session, and I sat up at the end of that session. I said, okay, so I need to know more. I've found this like short course in South Australia. What do you think? Do you know these people? Should I do this? And she handed me the flyer and said, well, this is where I studied, Body Intelligence Institute in Melbourne. It's a 2-year course. You can do it. This is not magic. There's nothing special about me. Everyone has this ability. Everyone has this capability. If you want to do it, if you feel the call, if this is going to be your thing, then do it. And so I called the ever-patient Serenity and said, because the course had actually started already, but I could join it at the second seminar, which was the following week. I was like, how would it work if I just was not around next week and I did this thing? But I had been doing this for a couple of years now, reducing my hours, you know, just shedding, it's like making space. And then this kind of just landed. There wasn't enough space. But it just felt like, yeah, this is the thing. And I remember going for a walk with someone who may watch this. I don't know if I should know. I probably shouldn't name him. I don't know. Anyway, a man around Violet Town, who's a good friend of both of ours, and we were walking up in the forest, and I was saying, I don't know, you know, it seems crazy, you know, this, that, and the other thing. And he's like, oh, it sounds like you've already made up your mind. You know exactly what you're going to do. And I'm like, no.
Yeah,
you're right, actually.
I love that.
You know exactly what I'm going to do. Yeah.
That is fantastic. I feel like this therapy found you.
Yeah.
I feel like it, you know, was something we were talking about the other night too, that I believe that inspiration is the earth mind that it's expressing through your earth body. It's I feel like, you know, this is something that uploaded into you.
Yeah.
And your bones have just like moved you in the way that you've needed to go to get to the point that you're at now.
Yeah. Yeah. And the things that, yeah, I guess one other thing that's coming to me is, Sal teaching that I remember learning about the way that the Lakota think about or have this perception around gifts, and that everybody has a healing gift. Everybody's a healer, and it's just up to you to find what is your way. Some people it's plants, some people it's, you know, some people it's with your hands, some people it's, you know, and that was another one of those pieces of permission, because it was huge for me. Like, I'd lived my whole life, like my career, everything was in my head, and quite a, I guess, look, I don't want to put negative things on it, but I was pretty much like, you get the shit done is more important than looking after the people. And I don't have time for people, relationships. I'm too busy saving the world, being clever, you know, I don't want to be too mean to myself, but, you know, that's kind of like the perception that I had. So this idea that I might follow a path to do something that is about healing and connection with people, it felt like, that's ridiculous. That's not me. That's not who I am. It felt like such an imposter, or just what a load of nonsense. Like, that's just, you know, where is this even coming from? So allowing that shedding of those limitations that I was putting on myself, you know, and that learning process over a couple of years of like everything everything that we believe about ourselves is just a story that we're making up, and you can choose to let it go. You can choose to not be that. And having that kind of learned experience of, as I do that, this kind of perception that other people are going to think I'm stupid, or other people are going to think this is ridiculous, or that people come along with you. Like, people are kind of curious, or I don't know what they're saying behind my back, but I guess I've been lucky. I've got a lot of supportive people in my life who are sort of like, oh yeah, okay, do that.
Well, I think it suits you well. I think, the ways in which you move through this work is, I mean, like you say, it's totally different to how you used to function.
Mm.
And that in itself has been, hugely transformative.
Mm.
But what great service. Not only like the people that you're working with, but to yourself and to your family and your community.
And it's such a I guess there's two things kind of coming up for me. One of them is around, another driver for me was realizing that how uncomfortable I was when people were in pain, how uncomfortable I was with my inadequacy around being able to deal with it, and how my first reflex was always to recommend someone else that they should talk to. Just take this away to somewhere else because I don't know how to deal with it. And that I wanted to be able to be with people in whatever was presenting for them, but I needed to do a lot of healing and actually active learning about what is it to be with someone in their suffering. And as I started to get into that, and I started to do, practice sessions on people and things, and realize how much pain, how many people are in, it's like, it's no wonder that the world's such a debacle, because, people are just holding it together by a thread. It's like, if that, like it, and being constantly surprised by how much is going on for people that you don't see, and how much, and learning how to kind of be a part of that. And so that has been a part of, I guess, reconciling. I don't know if that's quite the right word, from this, like, have I just copped out? Have I copped out from trying to change the world, activism, policy, social enterprise, trying to transform the systems by getting in there and changing them? And is this just a cop out? I've gone for inner work because it's nice, it's beautiful. The work that I do is gorgeous and life affirming, and sometimes really hard, but is this a cop out? And I was fortunate to have come across, or someone handed me a book at the right time, by a woman called Susan Raffo, who is do you know Susan Raffo? She's a biodynamic craniosacral therapist in Minnesota. She wrote a book called Liberated to the Bone. And it was just, again, as these things land at just the right time, she puts the whole thing together about colonialism and violence, and we have to stop the violence, and we have to, we're all carrying intergenerational violence at so many levels, and to stop perpetuating it, we have to heal it. And that liberation, we have to be engaged in all the levels.
Sorry, that's me. Sorry.
That liberation has to happen to the bone. It has to happen all through our bodies. And, I guess it was also, I was wrestling this a lot around when Gaza and the Israel thing kicked off again, a couple of years ago. And it really, like, it's horrific, right? But it's in so many ways, and really for me, it triggered one of the things that really got me was the deliberate starvation, you know, and that kind of made me go into my own ancestry. It's like, how am I, you know, all 90% I've now gone and studied it, looked at it, of my ancestors survived the Great Famine in Ireland. And so it's this kind of like, you know, that really, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things to take off in that direction. But the other thing for me was just looking at this perpetuation of trauma. It's like the reenactment of ghettos, of genocide. It's like, whoa, like, yeah, it's like at a fractal, you know, all the way up, all the way down. If trauma is not healed, if it's not...
Sorry, I've got someone at the door now. Can you
So
just hold that door?
Let's see, yeah.
Hi, Jim, come in. Can you just... You do, come in. Can you just give me 5 minutes? I'm just wrapping something up here. I won't be a tick.
Wow, we've only got 5 minutes.
In here, he's helping us with a regen project.
Oh, great. Oh, cool. Yeah. Yeah, so I was kind of just rambling, but yeah, trauma, like, we just keep re-perpetuating it, you know, if we don't heal it. And so it's that kind of question of, okay, well, from big systems to, you know, trying to pull policy levers and economies and into like, what is it to sit one-on-one with a person and go deep into wherever we need to go to help them come into contact with what's the life that they're meant to be living, and to free up from things that they don't need to be carrying.
It's still systems change, isn't it?
Yeah. And yeah, I guess there's a sort of a belief in the goodness and potential of every person, you know, and that it's like, wow. Yeah, I remember having this revelation when I was traveling at some point, you know, of just how many people, there's just so many people. And what if all of them were like really able to be aligned with their purpose and connection to spirit and freedom to move? Like, what would be possible? Like,
it goes back to that first point that you were making, you know, around expansion of consciousness. And
it's so then bringing that right back down into the, okay, who's the person in front of me, and what do you know, what's the meaning of your life? What do you want to be doing with your life, and what's getting in the way of you being able to do that?
Perfect. Hey, thank you so much. It's been a really, really deep and enriching conversation. How can people get in touch with you if they want to be involved in what you're offering?
They can find me at healingconnection.au, which is at the moment not a very good thing, but within a few weeks, hopefully, will be an actual website. But if you go there, you can find me and book in. And you can also just email me, Kirsten at healingconnection.au. And I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. There's not much there.
That's okay. Yeah. They're all doorways, aren't they?
They're all doorways. And all the doorways will become more ornate and interesting over time.
All part of the process, right?
It's all part of the process.
All right. Well, hey, beautiful to talk to you. What were you going to say? I
just realized, as I said that just one little funny thing. So the name Healing Connection, that was on my most recent quest, which was last year. Went on a vision quest, and that was one of the questions I took. What do I call my work, or my business? I was just graduating at that time, and that's what came, Healing Connection. And I had a similar reaction as I had to the priestess of like, no. No, you can't be serious. That's naff. I won't get any URLs. Anyway, I sat with it for another couple of days, and it was very clear. Yeah, that's what this is about. This is about healing connection at all kinds of different levels, and that's what you're calling it. And so it's like, okay,
great.
Now It's just like living into, what does that mean? All right. Thank you.
So
Serana.
exciting. And I think it's a perfect name.
Mm.
All systems, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, my darling.
Thank
Well,
you so much.
thank you. And enjoy, how do you say it? Autora? Yeah.
Aotearoa.
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 I don't know that I would be confident that I've got that right, but the way that I have it is Aotearoa.
Aotearoa. I think Aotearoa. Well, anyway, enjoy the land of the long white cloud.
Thank you very much.
And beautiful to chat. Lots of love.
Thanks, Serana. See you soon.
See ya.